All right, so the moment you all have been waiting for, we have Miss Courtney Reynolds here, all the way from Purdue University in Indiana. Awesome. So if you guys haven't read already, Miss Courtney is a phenomenal speaker. She's here to talk to you guys a lot about different ways of using your relationships and leadership, specifically with her inspiring storytelling, and a catalyst for laughs and passionate agent for positive moments are all the ways that Miss Courtney Reynolds has been described. Her career grew out of serving in roles like a resident assistant, like some of you all, National Residence Hall Honorary Vice President. With 8 years of professional experience, Courtney currently leads the residential life team within one of the largest all-male housing communities in the country. Her building, y'all, has 1,200 males. She can hold her own, so y'all watch out. She is a lover of TED Talks. She's a runner, traveler, and a connector with student leaders on her campus and beyond. If you haven't already followed her, or she has not already followed you on Twitter, she is C_W_Reynolds. So please feel free to tweet her and quote her throughout it, and put your hands together for Miss Courtney Reynolds.
All right, y'all. Good afternoon. I'm going to do the Res Life thing and ask you to be a little more enthusiastic. So one more time, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Awesome, thank you. That was great. So for a second, I know Jenna is very flattering and thank me for being here, but let's make sure that we thank Jenna and her team for putting on the conference this weekend. It has been amazing. Few housekeeping items before we get started. Part one, I am wearing purple today. Came into Kansas not sure what was affiliated with which university. And so I was thinking last night after your roll calls, I was having a hashtag moment. And so I'm gonna try to do this well, probably not as well as yours, but it was like, hashtag, oh no, I hope I don't offend my hosting school. Hashtag, but I get to be friends with Kansas State, yeah! So I'm excited to be special buddies with everybody in purple today. The other thing that I wanted to point out is I know that I am in the flyer in your itineraries is speaking for 2.5 hours this afternoon, I believe. Gonna bring some comfort to you and let you know that we're only gonna be together for about an hour this afternoon, not 2.5. I want to give you time to get back to your hotels, change, freshen up for the banquet, get your feet up a little bit, all that good stuff. This probably won't be as much like a traditional keynote as it will be a bit like a workshop. So you're going to be interacting, and I'm going to ask you to be up and moving around. You can expect to see some social media, some YouTube clips, some fun things. So I will not be talking at you for the next hour. So those are our housekeeping items. And with that, I'm going to get rolling here. So, leadership beneath the soil. Kara 2013. I'm here to tell you that you are not operating on all cylinders right now. Okay? So differently stated, you haven't come close yet to reaching your full potential as student leaders. And so, let me be clear, this isn't an age thing. So I think you might hear that and say, well, yeah, Courtney, we're college students. Of course, we haven't reached our full potential, duh. This is more about determining at what point in your lives you are going to commit to fully understanding your values and your strengths. So it's about getting below the surface. It's about taking a look at our roots. It's about authenticity, and that takes some digging. And I'm going to challenge you to go deeper, all right? So the Gallup organization, how many of you have heard of Gallup? Some hands, okay. So I love Gallup. They are these super geeky data statistic people, and what they do is they go over the world and they're really curious about what makes people tick, what makes us do what we do. And specifically, they're really excited about leadership, okay? So they have traveled the world. They took, over the course of about 30 years' time, to interview 20,000 leaders, and 10,000 followers of those leaders to try to gather what makes successful leadership, what really makes a successful leader. Does anybody have any guesses as to what that might be? What do you think they might have determined? Charisma, okay? Anything else? Any other guesses? Let me get one more. What else?
Communication skills.
Communication skills, okay. So those are good things, but in actuality, they were asked, what is the single most important thing from 30 years of leadership research that you think makes a successful or a great leader? And the response is that a leader needs to understand their strengths just like a carpenter understands the tools that is in his toolkit. A leader needs to be aware of their strengths just like a surgeon is aware of the utensils that she has available for her to perform her surgeries. So great leaders are people that are in touch with their strengths. They really know what makes them tick, and that's what makes them successful. So what we can glean from this is that as leaders today, my hope is that we're going to gain a little bit of a stronger understanding of our strengths, of what's beneath the soil, of what's in our core. So I recently came across a viral YouTube video that I think is pretty cool. Have any of you seen Bat Kid Take San Francisco? A few head nods, okay. So I couldn't help but thinking when I looked at that clip, what a cool example of leaders firing on all cylinders. What can happen when people really want to do their best as leaders and come together and perform for themselves and for their community? So I'm going to share this clip with you. Check it out. I think you'll like it, and then we're going to chat.
With San Francisco cheering him on, 5-year-old Miles Scott lived out his wish of joining his favorite superhero, Batman, for a day of fighting crime. All right, I think we got it.
Batman flip.
The 5-year-old is waging his own fight against leukemia, and he got to live out his fantasy thanks to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. The two superheroes jumped into action after the city's police chief videotaped a plea for help.
Please, Cape Crusader, we need you. And bring the Bat Kid.
He received a police escort as they drove around town in a mock Batmobile. After rescuing a woman,
Oop. Oh no. Okay. Well, I can explain to you what happens next. So, give me 1 second here to pull back up my PowerPoint. All right. So in the end, he got to capture the Riddler. He got to meet the Penguin. The cops walked away with those people in cuffs, and he got to visit them in jail. The front page of the San Francisco Chronicle put him out there and said, "Bat Kid saves Gotham City." President Barack Obama video recorded a message for him and told him thank you for making Gotham a safer place. And in the end, this little boy who had leukemia, his life was pretty impacted by that experience. So when leaders come together and they fire on all cylinders and they engage their strengths and the strengths of their community, some really cool things can happen. So my question for you is, why does it take problems sometimes, or people coming to us for a solution in order for us to fire on all cylinders? Why do we wait? Think of what the world would look like if we all knew on a daily basis that we were capable of turning an entire city into a Gotham City for a little boy who has leukemia. What if we were all aware of our own Gotham City making qualities? So I'm curious, when I look out into this audience, what could we collectively accomplish if we were all at our very best? I would care to bet that in this room there's an Olympic athlete who simply never tried their sport. I bet that there's someone with the brain wiring to create a cure for cancer who doesn't believe that they're smart enough. I bet that there's a world-class musician who may not have had access to an instrument or lessons. And I bet there's someone with the strategizing capability and the heart for ending racism in our country who is too overwhelmed by the hugeness of the prospect. So think about that for a minute. What do you think, who do you think might be among us right now? Take a second and reflect on that. Who might be in this room that has not discovered their full potential. All right, so I'm going to challenge us all to be Bat Kid for a minute here. We're going to do something together. First, what I want you to do is close your eyes. Don't fall asleep. All right, next thing I'm going to have you do is keep your eyes closed, and I want you to smile. Because you can just look goofy. Nobody's looking at you. Everybody's eyes are closed. Awesome. I love it. And now we're going to daydream a little bit. I want you to come up with a superhero version of yourself. Quiet the voices in your head that are telling you to stop being childish, or the ones telling you to be afraid of looking silly, and I want you to just dream for a minute. Who would you be? Would you be Batman? Would you be a cancer-curing scientist with superpowers? Would you be the President of the United States? Would you fly a spaceship? What would your costume look like? How would you sound? And would you have a motto? Take about a minute and think about that. Who would you be as a superhero? Okay, you can open your eyes. So the purpose of that activity is to kind of think about the cool thing about the hero that you just picked is probably a pretty good indicator into what's going on under the soil for you. It's shining a little bit of a light onto your roots. It's looking at your potential. So the purpose of our session today is not to send you out into the world wondering what opportunities that you've missed, but rather to realize that there is something so cool about the opportunities in front of you. You as college students are at an amazing time in your lives. It's a pivotal point, and you still have time to become who you are meant to be. So that is the exciting part about being here today with you. I want you to reach and stretch and be the best versions of yourselves. And here's the thing about you. I'm on to you all. I know that you know that there's something special about you. I know that you know that there's a reason that you're here. And by here, I mean here on earth. There's a purpose. Specifically, you're here because you're curious about leadership. But that tells me something about you. That tells me that you see something. You see a spark, you see a light, and you're here to explore that. And I think that that is really, really cool. So in fact, I think that the universe does some interesting things sometimes, and I think that it brought us together here today to talk about that, and hopefully so that I can make a little bit of an impact. You'll hear me talk about the universe a lot. I'm going to share a really quick story with you that I think is funny as I was thinking through this. So this is the key to my used-to-be Jeep. I had a 2001 Jeep Cherokee Sport, and it got really old, and it was on its last leg, and we kept having to get it fixed, and finally we realized, okay, we're done. So did months of car searching, found a new car, got in the Jeep. We're kind of praying that the Jeep would start so that we could get it to the dealership to trade it in for the new car. We turned the key in the ignition, and that's what happened. I think that the universe does some quirky, crazy, cool things. And so again, I think that bringing us together here today is one of those. So if you'll allow me, I'm going to share with you a little bit of my story that helps put things in perspective and might help you to understand why specifically I'm here with you today talking about this. Is that cool? Everybody good with that? Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to start in the present, let you know some things about myself. One big thing is that I identify very strongly as a feminist. When I was in my mid-20s, I did not think that I was ever going to get married. I was on this independent woman, hear me roar kick, and then lo and behold, last year, tied the knot. You can do the ah. So that's me and my partner, Steve. That's the reason I get up every morning. It's pretty cool stuff. But cool things that'll kind of give you some insight into us and into me. We work really hard to have an equitable household where we share responsibilities so that we can each have equal opportunities to grow within our careers, which I think is pretty fun. Some other things, I ran 3 half marathons in the last year. In fact, I ran one last weekend in Wisconsin, which I know we have a number of people in here from Wisconsin. And I'm at my best when I spend time one-on-one with students and with people and can hold a mirror up to their strengths, show them those strengths, and then advocate for them as they journey along using those strengths. That's when I'm at my best. But the person that you see here today is a product in the making, and I've come quite a long way. And so really the part about my story that I want you to be aware of is more rewind to college for me. So when I was in college, when I was an undergrad, I had fire engine red hair, the color of those lights up there, had my nose pierced, was somebody who was known as being pretty opinionated, pretty outgoing, pretty funny. I was the vice president of the NRHH. Do we have NRHHers in here? Awesome, cool. I was an RA for 3 years, and I was also a campus ambassador. I think we have some campus ambassadors in the room as well. And so I think from the outside, I looked like I had it together, and I seemed like a pretty cool, confident woman. And I am, but what people didn't know, and what I don't think I even knew, was what was going on underneath all that. And so what I'm sharing with you today, I really haven't talked about before, so this is the first time that I'm sharing with a group. But I was, for starters, a serial relationshipist, is what I call it. So I hopped from one relationship to the next to the next. I was always in a long-term relationship, and as soon as I was getting out of one, I was jumping into another. And so I was never really taking time to get to know who I was on my own. I had this group of friends that I can remember so vividly, and I thought they were so cool, so smart, and outgoing, and beautiful. And I pushed them away because I could not understand why it was, or why it was that they included me in their circle, or how I fit there. I saw my value largely in my appearance and my body, and I waged kind of a war against myself and struggled with bulimia, and that's something that I still struggle with on and off. And nobody could see any of that. No one could necessarily see any of that. I started to joke that I was only in college to get my MRS degree, and I became really adamant that I thought, okay, I just want to be a stay-at-home mom. I want 5 kids. I was on the 25-year plan, headed straight for family. That was exciting. That's what I wanted to do. So that all came to a screeching halt when I got engaged to somebody who I thought fell in line with those values, and kind of came out of the closet as a career-driven woman, and that ended our relationship. He didn't like that. I thought it was awesome, and for the first time in my life, I felt really liberated and free, and like I might be starting to get in touch with who it was that I really was. So that was pretty exciting. So from there, I kind of took off and never looked back. I dedicated 1 year at least to being single and being on my own and not dating. And if any of you haven't done that, I would encourage you in your 20s to take at least a year and be on your own and figure out who you are just by yourself. And if you've already done that, kudos to you. That is awesome. Got really involved in student leadership, got really excited about my career, and took off. So in any case, what's important to note about that is I wish, in retrospect, that I had done some things differently. I wish I would have taken time to really get to know who I was. I had some preconceived notions. I listened to my family a lot. I listened to people I was dating. I listened to outside sources, but I never really listened to myself. And so I can't help but wonder what would have happened if earlier on I would have caught on to the fact that there's something special within me, and my life was meant to go in a different direction. So that's kind of what I'm hoping that your wheels are turning about. All right. I call that, by the way, the spaghetti noodle castle syndrome, because I built a spaghetti noodle castle, spent a lot of time doing that, and ended up having to deconstruct it in the end. All right. So I'm hoping that I can inject into your heart some excitement about your leadership potential. I want each of you leaving here and creating your own Gotham cities within your own current and future communities. There is something about the rest of our time together focused on leadership that you should be aware of, and that is that we're going to be digging in the dirt. And so we're going to get our hands a little bit dirty, because I'm here to tell you your Gotham City is underneath the soil. And so you got to do some digging to get that. So is everybody on board with that? All right. Awesome. So leadership is a term that I have a little bit of beef with. It's broad, and I don't know that we take a lot of time to really figure out what it means to us. I sometimes think that REs and student staffs, we put you all through like a conveyor belt process. It's almost as if sometimes we put you through training and it's like you go through all the quality control stations and then we shoot you out on the end, we wrap you up in a pretty package, and we stamp you with this leadership label. And then you're expected to be leaders. And so there's a clip from Despicable Me that reminds me of this, and I'm going to play it for you, as long as my computer cooperates. Okay, so you're deemed a leader, and there are a certain level of expectations that automatically come along with that for you. What I see a lot of students doing is kind of scrambling to fight that status quo. So you get your RA position, you get a student supervisor position, and you're like, all right, this isn't a package deal, I'm unique, I don't like this leadership stamp. I'm gonna piece together my own brand of leadership because we each bring our own flavor to the table. And I think the problem with that is that we miss a critical examination of what leadership is. And so we're gonna do an activity. We're gonna get up and move around and get our brains, our wheels turning about leadership. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to get up, and this is gonna be a challenge. I want you silently to find a partner in the room, somebody that you don't know, without talking. That's the first part. Go ahead and go. This is kind of one for the introverts in the room. I get a thank you down here, which is great. I actually identify as an introvert, so I can understand. All right, does everybody have a partner? Does anybody not have a partner? Find one another. All right, we have an odd person out. You know, we'll just put you in a triad, so you can join. How about this group down here? And y'all can take turns. All right, next thing you're gonna do is designate one of you as number 1 and the other person as number 2 without talking. One person needs to be 1, one needs to be 2. All right, now I'd like you to turn back to back. All right. On the count of 3, you're going to turn and face one another and introduce yourself by name. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you just get to say your names, that's it. We're going to go back to quiet for a minute. All right, so this is going to be a challenge, but here's what's going to happen next. Person number 1, you are going to ask person number 2 a question. Okay, and that question is going to be, who are you? Some of you are like, oh, I've done this before, and it's tricky. Okay, so person number 1, you're going to keep asking that question over and over and over. Person number 2, your response is going to be a descriptor. So if somebody says, Courtney, who are you? I'm going to say a woman. Courtney, who are you? A daughter. Courtney, who are you? A runner. All right? And person number 1, you are not allowed to talk or help out. You just get to ask, who are you? And person number 2, you got to keep going. You got to keep talking. All right? Until I tell you to stop. You got this. All right, go ahead and start. Okay, stop. Stop. Okay, the person who just went, take a deep breath. Now it's your turn to grill the person that you are partnered with, all right? Go ahead and start. Okay, and stop. All right, other person, take a deep breath. That's awesome. Okay, so that was just a warm up. We're gonna do one more round, but here's the catch-22 with round 2. Round 2, you're asking one another, who are you as a leader? All right, who are you as a leader? And so we'll do the same order. So ready, set, go. And stop. I just saw a high five, so that one went well. All right, and we can turn the tables. Person who has not gone, your turn. Who are you as a leader? Ready, go. All right, stop. All right, everybody take a deep breath. And give yourselves a pat on the back. Literally. That's a tough activity. All right, what I'm going to have you do is go back to your seats, and we're going to have some discussions at our seats. So go ahead and get seated. Awesome. All right, and what you're going to do next, if I can have everybody's attention, is you're going to use these questions, and they're kind of squished, but you can still see them, to have a discussion at your table. So what was that activity like for you? What did you notice about your responses? Go ahead and take some time to share. All right. I can have your attention again. Good conversations going. So for how many of you is that kind of a tough exercise, especially when it got to the leadership piece? Yeah, quite a few. Because we're not in the habit of really thinking critically about leadership. And so we've got that in the forefront of our minds. But we need to dig a little deeper than that even. To reach our full potential, we need to not only understand who we believe we are as leaders, but we also need to cross-check those beliefs against a few factors. We need to separate fact from fiction. So what is real for each of us? So how do you do that? You have to take a good hard look at where your notions of what it means to be a leader have come from. Because we want to make sure that we aren't using somebody else's compass to navigate our map. So if on your map, your life path is supposed to be south, but you're carrying somebody else's compass and their path is to the east, and you're heading east, you're headed in the wrong direction. I don't want you to have to go back and retrace your steps. And we don't sometimes realize how powerful influencing forces can be in our leadership journeys. Some of those influences can be good, but they're only good when they help to guide us toward our own unique capabilities and strengths. That's when we are at our best, not when we are chasing somebody else's idea of what leadership should be. So remember, there is not one sweeping talent among all great leaders. What binds us together, though, is that we know our roots. So I'm betting that for many of you, as you were using those words in that activity, you were probably saying a few words that are based on what you think you should be as a leader, and maybe not as much on what you are meant to be. There's an important difference there. So check this guy out. Can anybody see what that is? It's kind of quirky. It's a fish in a tree. Yeah. And so this comes from one of my favorite quotes from Albert Einstein, and that is, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. So, we're here to kind of seek out, where is that abrasion for us? Are there abrasive points in our leadership where we're trying to be something that we're maybe not meant to be, instead of going where our strengths lie as leaders? And I wanted to share with you, I read an article recently. It was written by a nurse who's worked in palliative care for a long time, so she's with people as they were getting ready to pass away. And she was asked for this article, what is people's number one regret? Because people talk a lot about what they wish they would have done differently before they passed. And the number one regret that she said is, people say, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. So none of us want to be in that boat, but one of the hardest things for all of us to do in our lives is to separate what we want from what others want from us. So it's my belief that there are two things that most heavily weigh on our notions of what we should be as leaders. The first is those who are close to us, who we've deemed leaders, and who have had the most influence on us as we grew up. So that could be peers, that could be mentors, that could be family. And the second is the media. So we're going to talk a little bit about those two. We're going to do another activity. So what I want you to start by doing is close your eyes again. And reflect on this. Think about who you most looked up to as a leader when you were growing up. What things did that person teach you directly or indirectly about leadership? So picture that person in your head. What do they look like? What do they talk like? And what do they teach you directly or indirectly about being a leader? Think about that for a second. Okay, if everybody's got their person, and they have that idea in their head, you can open up your eyes. And I want you to take some time, partner up with somebody that you're sitting by, and I want you to share who that person was, and you have some guiding prompters up on the screen to help you. So I want you to go ahead and answer those questions with one another, find a partner, go ahead and get started. Okay, in a minute I'm going to ask for some volunteers, so I'm going to let you think about that. If you're brave enough to stand up and share who your person is, I'll give you a second. Okay. All right. So, who were those people? And what were the lessons that they taught you? Who might be willing to share? Might be willing to share. Okay, I see a bunch of hands over here in the red hat. Do you want to stand up so everybody can hear you? Awesome, thank you.
Sure. My thing was, first, I look up to my dad as a leader, and one of the things that he always says is that doing the right thing is better than doing the popular thing, because inevitably, like, you're gonna have people that are gonna do the wrong thing, but like, for example, bullying. So like, I'm the kind of person to try to like stand up for other people if they're getting bullied or something like that, because like doing the right thing is better than like having other people think, oh yeah, that guy's so popular because he was bullying someone. So I try to like embody those features, or like my dad kind of just says like doing the right thing in any situation is always the best way to go. So that's pretty much what I got. So.
All right, awesome. So willing to confront, willing to stand up and communicate. Love that. Somebody else, I saw a lot of hands up. Who else had hands up? Okay, in the blue sweatshirt.
Okay, mine was probably my mother, because my mom, because I have 8 other siblings, and so there's 9 of us, and my mom was a single parent, like, growing up. And so my mom just, like, raised all of us by herself, and I learned, you know, like, you're going to have hard times when growing up, and you just remember you're always going to get knocked down, but it's you who has to get back up and keep going. So that was one of the biggest things I always looked at, you know, like, I'm going to get knocked down, but it's up to me to keep going.
Love it. Thank you. One more. You take. Okay, I see 2 hands with the red hair. Sure. Yeah. You can. I admire your enthusiasm.
Mine would be my high school history teacher. Whenever I would struggle with tests or with whatever student position I held, he would always tell me that it's okay to fail, because it's something that I can learn from, and in the future it's something that I know not to do again. And it's not the end all be all if I do make a mistake. It's something that I can look back on and say, okay, well, good job messing that up, now don't do it again. So it was always really encouraging when he pulled me to the side and said, it's okay, just don't make the same mistake twice. So it was really reassuring that life still goes on.
Okay, resilience. Like it. All right, sir.
Mine was my brother, and he taught me a lot. Like, he's 8 years older than me. He taught me that, like, no matter what like hand you get in life and what life hands you, you gotta like overcome it and get better from it, and don't just like play dead, I guess, and just always strive to be better. Like, got double surgery, you just gotta stay positive and just get better at whatever you want to do.
All right. Thank you. Okay, one more hand. I don't want to turn you down. I know these are good stories.
Mine was my sister, and she taught me that sometimes leaders are the ones who struggle most, and that just because you have struggled doesn't mean that you can't press through, and that you can't overcome no matter what your circumstances are.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you all for being vulnerable. That's awesome. All right. So what we want to make sure that we're considering here as we're talking about these stories is that these are influences on us, and likely pretty powerful influences when we're talking about family, friends, mentors, teachers, because there's an emotional connection that's going on there with that concept of leadership. But realizing that you are unique, you can't be someone else, you can only be you, and also realizing that there's a difference between admiring leadership traits in others and emulating leadership traits in others. And so again, we're going back to that theme of who are you specifically as a leader. So some of you are saying, well, I still embody some of those things. I value those. Okay, cool. So let's keep going. Let's take a look at this media thing that I was talking about. So talking about media sets me on fire. It's a pretty powerful thing. You're a generation who has grown up with a lot of exposure to it. I know you've heard that before. According to Occidental College, U.S. advertisers spent over $225 billion last year on media marketing. $225 billion. That must mean that they think that they're onto you. They must know something about you if they're willing to sink all of that money into marketing. And Occidental was quoted as saying, "This is the first time in human history that marketers have dictated our cultural norms and values." One of my favorite documentaries, Misrepresentation, also tells us that teenagers spend more than 10 hours a day consuming media. That's a lot of time. And so I can't help but think that those things impact us. And I think that even more directly than hitting on the topic of leadership, they hit harder on something deeper. And that is our inherent identities. And when I say inherent identities, what I mean is that these are identities that we can't shed. So the media's messages to us about our identities is dangerous territory, because when we start to believe them, we can get in trouble. And it's pretty easy to start to believe those messages that we're surrounded by all of the time. So our identities form the basis for the way that we experience the world, and that includes leadership. So we're going to do another activity that I actually love. This is one of my favorite things to do. We're going to take a look at some media messages, and I'm going to let you, with your really bright brains, dissect those a little bit and try to figure out what is it that those marketers spending all that money are spending money on trying to get across to you, because we know that there's messages beyond the messages. And we're going to take a look at how that might impact us as leaders. All right, so we're going to start here. I'm hoping that everybody can see these. But what I want you to think about for a minute, and we're going to discuss this in partnerships again, is when you look at these two magazine covers, and I mean, how many of you have picked up a Cosmo or a GQ before? Some, you see them on the grocery store racks. Lots of people read them. And so what I'm curious to know from you is, what I like to ask is, when you look at these, what do you hear media telling you? So it's one thing to see them, but what do you hear? So when I'm looking at Cosmo, what is it, Cosmo, that you are really trying to tell me here with these messages? Okay, everybody's excited. Yeah, sex. Absolutely. What makes you think that? It does, yeah. Yeah. And every girl's crazy about a sharp-dressed man, didn't you know? So what I want you to do is, at your tables, partner up. And I'm going to put some prompting questions. Take a minute, take some notes on these, because I'm going to put this slide away. So what can you gather looking at these before I change the slide? Everybody take a look. You're going to be quizzed. Not really. All right. So now what I want you to do in dyads, and we're going to do something a little different. I want everybody to grab a partner. And in fact, you know what? Let's get up and, I know that it's late afternoon. Let's get up and move around. Let's get up and move around. You can still be sitting, but find somebody different to sit by. All right, anybody missing a partner? Does anybody need somebody? If you do, raise your hands high. Find one another. All right. Anybody still looking for a partner? Back there? Okay, so you can just grab a dyad and you can turn it into a triad if you can't find somebody. All right. And here's what we're going to do. We're kind of going to do what we did when we did the first partners exercise. So designate somebody who's going to go first, designate somebody who's going to go second, and we're going to take turns sharing. So what I want you to do is reflect on these questions up here based on those two magazine covers we were looking at with one another. So person number one, take about a minute and talk about what your observations were. right, stop. And switch. All right, awesome. Need to stop. If I can have your attention back up here. Really good, passionate conversations happening. So what are we talking about out there? What were the observations? Sex runs America. Okay. What was that?
I was like, okay, like it's just America.
Okay. Sex runs, okay, more than just America. Anything else? I see a hand right there.
I guess I noticed it made us seem shallow.
Made us
There
seem
was
shallow?
nothing of substance. It was like, how to get the girl? Look at this needle. Ooh, sex. Like, shallow.
Okay, good observation. What about right here?
It was like polar opposites of hypermasculinity and hyperfemininity.
Polar opposites of hypermasculinity and hyperfemininity. Why don't you, if you would stand up and kind of explain that. What does that mean?
Like the magazine changed Tatum on it. It really emphasized being manly, being strong, being tough, being business. Whereas Demi Lovato, she was very emphasized as being sexual, feminine, how to please a man. You know, like it was all about what the front cover of that magazine was, and so that emphasizes how men and women are portrayed in media as two very different things.
Okay, do you think that's pretty in line? Do you think that's just Cosmo and GQ, or is that pretty in line with a lot of what you all see? A lot of what you see. Okay, how about over here?
I think that Cosmo is kind of how society really is, and then how everyone thinks, and GQ is how everybody wants to be.
Okay. What do you mean by that? So Cosmo is what everybody...
Yeah, like everyone thinks they're just like, oh, like the only important thing in life are sex and all like that stuff, especially like the shallow media. And then GQ is like everyone wants to be rich, and wants to be famous, and wants to be all good looking and all that stuff, and that's how everyone wants to live, but it's not very many people up there.
Everybody wants to be there, but it's not necessarily attainable. A hand behind you. Go ahead.
Well, I just if you looked at the two covers, like the one on Channing Tatum, one's from like the shoulders up, the one from the bottle was like from her knees up, and it was just like showing like all of the girls on those kind of covers, like they're all meant to be shown off, and like that's how we were talking about, and like girls walking to the grocery store, they see that, and like you think, okay, it's okay to show the boobs and wear skirts that like barely cover me and all that stuff, like it's just promoting that stuff, whereas the guy on the cover, granted he could have been like shirtless or whatever, but like he still has been,
Okay. Okay, so in the women's picture, a lot of the times we see a lot more body than in the guys. The guys are very well dressed. Okay. Anything else right here?
I thought it was very like self-centered focus. The girls said like 50 reasons why your ego should be bigger, and I just think that that's something with media is just it's all about you, how you can be better and what I think just very self-centered.
Very self-centered. Okay. Anything else? I know there's a lot of hands down here.
It made it look like they were flawless. Like even Channing Tatum was flawless, and so when we look at it, it's like, oh, we have to be flawless as well. Which people's flaws are their best attributes. And one person, one guy or girl may not like your flaws, but it can mean the whole world to someone else. And so.
Yeah, so it shows people as flawless. What I get curious about with that is how much time are we spending investing in fixing flaws that we can't really fix instead of doing other things like growing our leadership skills? I'm curious about that. Over here. Make sure you all speak up because I know it's kind of hard to hear probably in the back. So.
Looking at Demi Lovato's cover, what it said to me is this is what I need to be in order to get a man, or this is what I have to be in order for a man to want me. I think even me seeing her as flawless or as perfect also shows the impact of media on what I view as perfect, and then I compare myself. And so essentially what you're telling me is unless I put out sex, or unless I look like this, or unless I dress like that, then I'm going to spend the rest of my life alone, or something like that.
Right, yeah. So interesting, what does that say about leadership? What in there is about leadership? Anything?
Relating it back to leadership, I think we have the power to impact people in a manner that will let them know that it's okay to be just who they are and not to compare themselves to us or what they think we are. And so I think as a leader, it's important to be tangible and important to let them know who you really are, not necessarily put on this front that you're perfect, that you're flawless, that you're strong and nothing impacts you, because that's not true.
That isn't true, right? Things do impact us. Absolutely. Okay, we're going to take a look at 2 quick clips. We're going to do the same thing, but a lot more rapidly. One of them is from Duck Dynasty. I don't know how many of you watch that show. Here's some claps. And we're going to do the same thing with this. So I want your wheels turning. What message are you being sent? Ready for this? Hopefully this works.
Hello there. I'm Willie Robertson. You know what makes me happy? Besides bubble baths and puppies and not wearing pants during my interview, watching new episodes of Duck Dynasty on A&E. Sure, I like the old ones, but when the new ones come out, it's so much funner. Check it out.
And now, a sneak peek from the new season of Duck Dynasty. Premieres Wednesday at 10.
I apologize, y'all. The internet is not working great, but I think just from that clip, and what you go on to see in this clip is actually that they have 2 women that are with them. They're playing a game of Battleship. The women are in the kitchen cooking. The women decide that they want to host a secret wedding bash for somebody in their family, and the guys basically say this isn't going to happen, that's a horrible idea. So just looking at those characters, looking at kind of the mannerisms, we're going to go back to our PowerPoint here, and a lot more quickly, run through these with your partner. Go ahead. So what messages do you think you're being sent by that? All right. I'm trying to let one of my videos run through here while we're talking so we can make sure we get to watch it. And set this back up. Okay. So run me through that one really quick. I know it was brief, wasn't ideal. Some of you are familiar with the show. What messages? Anybody? See a hand back there.
I feel I've never watched Duck Dynasty myself, but I feel like I don't know how real it actually is, but it feels like it's loaded just trying to provoke a response. Like the whole thing is set up just to be offensive, so people will be offended by it and want to watch it to see if justice is kind of like brought to the guys. Because like, you know, whether or not you're a feminist or just for equality, you know, two women in a kitchen, they're cooking while guys are doing something not important, and then all of a sudden they're going to be the ones to try and tell the women what to do, despite the women being the ones working. Like that's just loaded, trying to get something to blow up.
Sure, okay. And actually, to be fair, I think with Duck Dynasty, because I've watched a few episodes, because I have all these friends that are all about it, and it really truly seems to be the culture that they live in. And it's out there for entertainment, because I think there is some of that, like, oh my gosh, people live like this, but people get really hooked on it, so it's interesting. It's kind of comical, but interesting. I saw a hand over here.
I don't know, I think it's not a breath of fresh air, just because it does more traditional values, which really much everyone in media doesn't have that kind of traditional values anymore.
Sure.
And the fact that it can be kind of humorous, but not the kind of crude humor that most people are used to now.
Sure.
And the fact that it's interesting and they don't have to wear like provocative clothing to catch interest.
Sure.
I think that's why a lot of people are watching.
Drawn to it, sure, absolutely. Something I'm curious about looking at all of those, I'll get to you in a second, is are there any identities that are missing? What might have been missing? Who's not represented? The average human being. Okay. Good. What more time? A quiet person. Okay. Anything else? I see hand.
Like a strong woman.
Strong woman. Okay. Anything else? Anything else that's not represented in those? Young people. People from different sexual orientations. Absolutely. Anything else? Different races. Anything else? Different nationalities, right. And so again, I'm going to go back to that question of, do you think that these are just unique clips, or do you think that this is actually pretty common with what we look at in media day to day? Pretty common. Yeah, I would say so. So what I'm going to have you do now is you can get up, stretch, go back to your tables, and we're going to take some time, we're going to write some thoughts down. All right. So if everybody can, grab a piece of paper and a pen if you have one. Grab something to jot down notes on. Ready to go. Hustle, hustle. All right. And I just want you to take, and again, I try to do stuff for both of our extroverts and our introverts in the room, and so from the introverted standpoint, what I want you to do is take just a minute, and I want you to jot down your answers for yourself. What are your personal feelings on these questions? So how might these messages impact my own understanding of myself as a leader or my leadership capability? What do I need to be aware of as a consumer of media as a leader? Go ahead and take 2 minutes and just jot down some thoughts. And we're going to keep rolling. How might these messages impact my own understanding of myself as a leader or my leadership capability? All right, so we're getting to the end. I know it's getting late in the afternoon. I appreciate you for hanging with me. So you did a pretty good job of identifying what's going on there, and I like to think of those things as boxes that we're asked to be put inside of, and we need to be willing to fight them. We need to be willing to challenge assumptions. So those things can easily limit our capabilities or tell us how we should be and what we should do, which works in direct conflict with finding our own way. So we have to be on top of all of these influencers. We need to be able to understand what they are and how they impact our leadership and our beliefs on leadership and ourselves. So now that we've done some dirt digging, we've looked on a basic level at what we believe to be true about ourselves as leaders, and we've looked at where some of our beliefs or even limitations have come from. The final thing that we need to do is we need to look at what is unmovable. So what is it that we can count on in ourselves to be successful leaders? And that is what is within, that is our strengths. Those are our natural gifts. They help to form our values, and they are the compass that we should be using every day as leaders. I like to call them our why, because I think that they form the why behind a lot of the things we do without us even realizing it. So I'm going to show you a video clip. I think it's going to work because I let it run. Have you ever seen Simon Sinek's video on starting with why? It's pretty cool. Share this with you. Maybe. Maybe not. Give it a second.
Others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions. For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more...
Okay, so we're going to kind of give up on the media piece, and that's okay.
...competition. And yet, they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else.
All right. Give me a second to get PowerPoint up here, and I am just going to pinch hit. So bear with me. All right, so this is what Simon says, and I am not going to say it as eloquently, and it's looking like my slide is getting cut off. But he says that the best leaders start with why.
Just like everyone else.
All right. He says that the best leaders start with why. But he said that oftentimes what we do, what most people do, is we start with what. So what am I all about? I can tell you that. We did a little bit of that when we did that exercise where you're getting together and saying, who am I as a leader? That's my what. The middle section of this is how. So how do I get to that? How do I get to who I am as a leader? But the central section is what's really important, and that's my why. That's my core. Those are my strengths. Those are my values. That's what drives me as a leader. But for how many of you, A, are you really, really keenly aware of those things? And B, do you let those shine? Do you share your why? I'm going to pull up one more media clip just to see if it's going to work. If not, we're going to wrap up. But you'll get the gist, I think, here. And this is someone who I think knows her why very well. So this is Deb. Deb is, she's a doctor. And she has breast cancer and is about to go in for a double mastectomy. And so she brings together all of these doctors that are about to operate on her, who she knows. And she decides to have a dance party to Beyonce's Get Me Bodied with them before she goes in for this surgery.
I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what?
Oh gosh, we still have Simon Sinek going. Awesome. There we go. That worked together really well. Okay, so, all right. So in any case, I want to spend some time before we leave today talking a little bit about our why, getting in touch with that. And so what we're going to do, we're going to get up, we're going to move around one last time. I'm going to give you some prompting questions that I think are kind of some tried and true methods to start to get at what is at your core. So beyond all those perceptions and those outside noises, what really is at your why. And so I'm going to have you get up right now, find a partner. We'll go quick, I promise. Okay. So the questions I'm going to have you take turns answering is, who are the friends who really seem to love you and be invested in you? What are those people like? What characteristics do they embody? So who are the friends who really seem to love you and be invested in you? What are they like? What characteristics do they embody? Take about a minute per person. We're going to go pretty quickly here. Go ahead and answer that question. Have you stop? And this is the last question I'm going to have you answer today. And that is, what type of work makes you the happiest? What would you do without getting paid? Go ahead and talk about that for a minute. What would you do without getting paid? All right. All right, Kira, 2013. You can just have a seat where you are. You can go back to your tables, whatever you want to do. We're going to wrap up. For those who haven't moved around, stretch your arms, get the blood flowing. All right. So, I have some homework for you all, especially because my media clips did not cooperate today, which is kind of comical, but it works out okay. It's good because I can give you some things to go home and make sure that you do. So number one, I would really like for you to go online and watch Simon Sinek, his TED Talk, on what great leaders do to inspire. It's also called Start With Why. Check that out. That's part one. I would love to see you take his chart, that circle, that bullseye that I put up here, and I would love to see you fill that out for yourselves. And I would love to see you check out the clip of Deb. It's called Deb's OR Flash Mob. It's really moving, especially if you watch the whole thing. I think that her why is pretty loud and clear, and it's pretty inspiring to the people around her. I hope that I get to share my why in a way like that. So I want you to do those 3 things. And I want us to think, we know to understand and develop our full potential, we have to be able to understand our influencers and examine our values. The final piece of the puzzle for you today is pretty simple. It's that we need to practice. Practice accepting that some of our current beliefs may not be in line with our values, and that's okay. Practice accepting and understanding our strengths and values and nourish them. Practice knowing that what is above the surface will shrivel and fade if what is below the surface is not tended to. Practice examining our influencers around us and our doubts about ourselves. Practice exploring our core and practice sharing our why. The more crystallized we can become in these endeavors, the closer that we are coming to reach our full potential, not only as leaders, but as people. When we understand our core, we are unmovable mountains, and we are at our best. We should always be shining a light under the soil and peeking at our roots. Are they healthy? Are they grounded? And is what is above the surface representative of what's going on below the surface? So I'm going to close our time together today with a final story about understanding where I'm coming from and where I'm going. That's my mom and I. And I'm going to share with you that my mom and I recently had a visit, and she talked to me about my great-grandma, who I was named after. And she told me that my grandma, when she was young, had the option to go to high school or to not go to high school, and she decided, you know, I better stay at home. There's work to do on the farm, and there's stuff I need to do. And so she did that. My grandma, her daughter, really had a passion for going to college and wanted to go to college. And my grandma's family told her, not this day and age, kiddo, you're going to stay at home and have kids. You're going to do the family thing. College isn't for you. So she did not go. So as my mom was growing up, my mom really wanted to be a doctor. And she's a really bright woman. She aspired to be a doctor. And my grandma told her, you need to be probably a nurse or a secretary. Think about one of those 2 things as a career. Cool thing is, something that my mom tells me on a pretty regular basis is, you know what? You go get it. Go take on the world and you do whatever you want to do. I totally support you. So the moral of this story is that I wish I could speak back into those generations of women in my family and tell them not to listen to the noise. Tell them to go with their guts. I can't help but imagine how they might have influenced the world if they had been able to do that. There's great irony in the fact that I grieve for those sacrifices, yet ultimately I'm a product of their journeys. And because of that, I owe it to them to hear my own inner voice and to act on it. I wish for you and those who come after you a different story. I wish for you to listen to your inner voices and to drown out the noise. I hope that you look at your roots under the soil and let them speak loudly. Be willing to leave here with the understanding that, as Joseph Campbell once said, we must let go of the life we had planned to accept the one that is waiting for us. Your life ahead of you, Kara 2013, is incredible. Go change the world. Thank you.